Hello lovely crafters, this is Rachita and today I'm here with a big bunch of cards. First I have some cards with background techniques and then we'll make some fun cards for the upcoming season. Let's start with this cool Chic card. For this I'm using the Crafty Scrappers birthday script background stamp set. So I stamped it on a white card panel using some embossing ink and used white embossing powder to do some heat embossing. Then I used Crafty Scrappers 8x8 inches splash stencil and placed it over my embossed card panel. I used Crafty Scrappers dye inks Apple and Ceres to blend ink through the stencil onto my embossed card panel. That left a lovely ink blended pattern onto my card panel. I carefully wiped off the excess ink which did not get absorbed over the embossed area. I used Crafty Scrappers dye inks Daffodil and Lavender to blend around the edges as well as in the center of the card just to get rid of that stark white peeking through. I die cut a tiny spectacle frame and colored it with a blending brush using the Arctic dye ink. I colored and fussy cut a Chic image from the Crafty Scrappers stamp set Wild Birthday and then added the spectacle frame onto its eyes just to make it look cool. I then trimmed down my card panel and added it to a red card base. I finally assembled the card by putting a sentiment Happy Birthday to one cool Chic and of course the Chic in the center. That completes the birthday card for a cool Chic with a lovely background. Let's look at the next card now. Here I have used some alcohol ink blending on vellum. As you can see, I am blending some shades of green and blue onto vellum. Then I laid the splash stencil on the inked vellum and wiped off the ink through the stencil using some cotton soaked in isopropyl alcohol. This was the result. Then I used the Crafty Scrappers Dot to Lines stamp set and embossed the design over the vellum using some gold embossing powder. Next, on a pastel yellow card panel, I used the Crafty Scrappers Sunburst stencil and made a pattern using the Crafty Scrappers gingerbread dye ink. I die cut the gold embossed vellum panel using a frame die and then placed it at the center of the pastel yellow cardstock. I also die cut a pretty piece of foliage from the same yellow pastel cardstock and then placed it at the center of the card. Finally assembled the card over a dark brown chocolate colored card base. To complete the look of the card, I created a wonky stitched border using a gold acrylic pen. Here it is. I tried some mixed media techniques on this next thanks card. To start with, I took a card panel from some watercolor paper. Then I used the Crafty Scrappers shimmer sprays, forest moss and dancing peacock to create a color-blended shimmery background. Look how brilliant this turned out. Here's a lovely stamp set by Crafty Scrappers. It's called Doodle Leaves. To give the look of mixed media, I decided to use the Doodle Leaf stamps without any stamping tool. I used a moss-colored pigment ink to stamp the solid doodle leaves and some gold pigment ink to stamp the detailed doodle leaves to create a background. Here's another lovely stamp set from Crafty Scrappers, Mixed Media Artistic Stitches and Lines. I used one of the stitched line stamp to create a border with black pigment ink. Then I used a portion of the splash stencil and some sea glass dazzle paste to create some dimension with pattern. Then I distressed the edges of the panel and added some gold accents to the border with an acrylic pen. Then I took a mirror gold card panel, a little bigger than this panel, and added it behind. I mounted the whole thing on a white card base and added a die cut sentiment. So that completes our card. Now let's get to some fun cards. Let's start with this one. Now Raksha Bandhan is coming up on 11th August. And Crafty Scrappers has this beautiful stamp set called Celebrate Rakhi. I'll be using this one. For the card base, I used a top folding note card. I used this pink card panel and embossed this beautiful mandala texture on it using an embossing folder. I took another white card panel of the same size and die cut through it using a circle die and made a circular window. I also stamped, colored and fussy cut the brother-sister image. Then I took some Crafty Scrappers dye inks, lavender and arctic and did some ink blending over the mandala embossed pink cardstock. Then I stamped the sentiment Happy Raksha Bandhan on the white card panel using the same colors of ink, that is, the arctic and the lavender. I layered the card panels and the image over the card base to complete the card. Let's make this butterfly card now. Here, I used a card panel with die-cut butterfly windows backed with craft foam and double-sided adhesive. I have used Crafty Scrappers floral foliage stamp set to gold emboss the gorgeous floral image onto the panel. I then colored it using color pencils and added some shimmer to it using Wink of Stella shimmer pen. I first added the panel to the card base and then added additional double-sided adhesive around the butterflies to reinforce the die-cut edges. Then I added the beautiful shaker elements, mermaid scales and blackberry bliss from Crafty Scrappers and covered up with the acetate followed by the main panel. That completes this butterfly shaker card. Now let's move on to another shaker card which I made with Friendship Day in mind. However, it can be used for other occasions too. Here I have used another wonderful Crafty Scrappers stamp set known as Party Like a Pirate. So I picked out these three lovely images, stamped, colored and fussy cut them. Next I took a small piece of white cardstock and randomly added some blue dye ink to it. Now for the star of the show, Crafty Scrappers Envy Shimmer Paste. So I spread the shimmer paste onto the small piece of cardstock that I had just colored. And now we have our own custom made glitter cardstock. I used a wave border die to cut out a wave shape from this glitter cardstock that we just created. Then I took a piece of acetate and prepared the card base. On the card base, I added an oval die cut piece which I colored using the blue dye ink. I also cut out several card panels with oval windows and a craft foam panel to build the depth of the shaker window. For the pirate ship, I took a piece of transparent thread and added it behind using some tape and pieces of cardstock. Then I suspended it in between with a little slack on one of the die cut panels to be layered first. Finally, I assembled the shaker card by layering all the panels and sandwiching the pirate ship, waves and the acetate in between. Completed with the sentiment, "You are my greatest treasure," and the lovely mermaid scales shaker elements. Here's a closer look at the completed card. So that's all for this video. Thank you so much for staying along till the end. Bye-bye.